Welcome, Architect Lee Siong, to our Steel Actions. So let's say hi to our audience and introduce yourself.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. Hi, I'm Architect Chong Lee Siong of IDA Alliance and LSA Architects Sdn.
So Architect Lee Siong, could you share with us how you got into this architecture?
I've always said that if I was born, well, say 15 years younger, or 15 years later for that matter, I may not have been an architect. I've always been interested in making things, designing things. In those days, we don't even have toys, so we make our own stuff, we fold paper, we cut cardboard and all that. So I've always been interested in design, but not necessarily of buildings. I was more into toys, things that we use every day. My only access to foreign literature was with the British Council library in those days in KL. So weekends I would go to the British Council, I would devour everything in the library, I would read about things, and when the time came for me to pursue tertiary education, there was nothing about automotive design, nothing about industrial design that I would know of. So the only thing is that you go through the listed profession that's approved by your parents. Either you become a doctor, you become a lawyer, or you become an engineer, and somewhere down there will be probably a mention of an architect. So I thought, okay lah, architecture seems to be the closest thing that I could get to at least doing some drawings instead of just studying things. So that's how I ended up being an architect.
So who is the person that actually shaped how you think about design?
I don't think there was any particular person in my younger days that would have led me into doing design and all that. I was very much about trying to find things myself. But after I got into architectural school, then from there when I started reading up about architects, because I'm in the architectural education then, yes, there are a few prominent architects at that time that inspired me. Primarily the British architects like Sir Norman Foster, Renzo Piano, the modernist people, or they call it the constructivist people. That really inspired me in those days.
When you started your first practice, what is your core philosophy that you want to stamp onto Malaysia built environment?
Right. Well, before I came back to Malaysia, I actually worked for 3 years in Australia. And then when I came back to Malaysia, I worked for 2 years to get my registration. So I really only started my practice after about 5 years of work, of which the first 3 years was in Australia. So I would say that my design influence would have been following my education. I landed in Australia for my architectural education, and then from there I was immediately exposed to the constructivist movement. And of course, when I was practicing for the 3 years in Australia, I was exposed entirely to the Australian way of building. Right, so when I came back to Malaysia, I suppose I brought all of that back to me. And the first few years of practicing in Malaysia, I saw what was being done in Malaysia, and I had a bit of a cultural shock. And it's like, that's not what I believe architecture ought to be. It shouldn't be that way. There are other ways to do things which I strongly believe are a better way of doing it, and should be the direction of what architecture ought to be.
Would you mind to share what is the culture shock that you mentioned?
I'll say particularly with regards to the use of materials and how we build things. So back in Malaysia, well, we look at buildings in broadly two kind of categories. The well-built buildings are always reinforced concrete, brickwork, plaster, and paint. The lousy buildings are the ones with zinc roof sheets and timber framing and that kind of a thing. So corrugated zinc roof sheets, the corroding ones, that is, the rusty ones, and other, are always regarded as the kampung stuff or the illegal buildings. Any proper building will have to be reinforced concrete, brickwork, plaster, and you have a white coat of paint on it. But over in Australia, I found that the primary building materials are always timber. Houses have weatherboard as the walls, timber framing, and what appeared to be corrugated zinc sheets are actually coated steel with proper profiling, and they're in all the factories. In all the modern buildings, they use it as a cladding, they use it as proper roof decking. Right? So that was the main influence. I find that architecture really is about the detailing, the using of the right materials in the right manner, and the architecture takes on the appearance of the material you select and how you use the material, how you actually build the building using the material. and it's all exposed. Yeah, quite unlike our common way of doing things where you build the building and then you plaster it over. Doesn't matter what is inside the walls, you plaster it all up and you just paint it. So that was the key differentiation that influenced me. I said, we have to break that. Yeah, we should not continue to have to build buildings in that manner.
So I think you already covered the next question, which is, in your philosophy, is it important in resilience the buildings or resilient? I mean, nowadays a lot of architects talk about resilient timeless design. So,
Most definitely. No, most definitely. Again, being influenced in my childhood before I went to Australia, I saw buildings. Of course, I mentioned already, the lousy buildings are the ones with zinc roof sheets and corroding metal and rotting timber. Then the supposedly good buildings are reinforced concrete, brickwork, plaster, and painted. But most of the times you see that the buildings are very heavily weathered. The paint that you apply, you see black streaks of rain, dirt, and a lot of times the concrete, the plastering start to crack and spoil off. Right? So I find that at that time it was the norm, because everywhere I look, the buildings are like that. I live in a terrace house that also was like that. Right? So I thought, yeah, maybe that's the norm. Until I went to Australia, then I saw buildings, they are built with weatherboard, buildings with fair face brickwork with no plastering, with no painting, buildings with, at that time I thought they were corrugated zinc, but actually now I know they're actually coated steel decking, and they look beautiful because if it's so raw, it is as the material is, you put it up and it stands the test of time. It doesn't weather, it doesn't corrode, it doesn't crack. Yeah, and I think that was really the key thing that struck me.
So Architect Lee Siong, what was the project that taught you the most? Not necessarily the biggest, the most celebrated project, but something that changed you.
Okay, I suppose being an architect, yeah, we are a little bit like an artist. We want to do certain things. We want to design certain things. I mentioned about my influence in Australia and saw what I really believe was the right way to do things. And then when I came back to Malaysia, I saw half of the things I'm doing here. Really, that's a better way of doing things. You know, when I first come back, immediately after graduation, there's always this great enthusiasm. Yes, I'm out to change the world now. I'm a licensed architect. I should be able to do everything I want, and everyone will have to just do what I design. I'm going to change the world. But of course, the reality is never like that. Yeah, when you first get your first commission, someone asks you to come, I want to design a house. You say, I've got just the design for you. I got this. I want to use metal decking. And no, you can't use metal decking. You know, my house must have tile roofs. My house must have Roman columns, pilasters, and all that. So all those things challenges my concept of architecture. But you do have to find certain compromises, because ultimately, the people who commission you to design the building, they are the owners. Yeah, they do have their preferences and all that. So it was a very sharp learning curve on how to deal with people, how to communicate with people, how to swallow some bitter pill at certain times, swallow your pride a little bit, just to be able to physically get myself into the whole industry to start to work. I suppose the biggest break that came for me when I gained enough confidence, I suppose, was there's this commission for a very high technology factory for a multinational client, one of our regular clients, and we work with them. And so there's this big commission now that arrived. And in a way, they sort of trusted me, and they said, look, we've only got the requirement for the technicalities or the functionality of the building, but as to how you put the building together, we're engaging you as the architect, so you tell us.
So you get the freedom.
In a way it is, because that was also the commission that I applied, full building information modeling. It was also what I truly believe in. I say in order for us to design buildings of a certain quality, we have to go the industrialization route. And one of the key ways in which we can actually design the building to have the quality of an industrialized product is we have to use the right design tools. So I've always been pushing for building information modeling, and we pushed it to this particular client for this particular commission, and they accepted it. So in a way, it's just my first architectural commission, whereby I can say I was almost given a total free rein as to how I put the building together. So that was quite an eye-opening part for me, and I think that was quite pivotal for me.
So you get the 100% satisfaction, sir?
It's definitely, yeah, definitely. I still refer to that building as a reference and as we come today for all our new projects.
So Architect Lee Siong, referring to just now you shared that project, so do you think that is it something that is influenced in resilient buildings and also sustainability or timeless design?
Yes, most definitely. I can't recall who was the one who made that phrase, but they say that if something is not built to last, then it's not meant to be built or it shouldn't be built. Yeah, and especially buildings. Buildings last for generations. Today, if you look at all the ruins of the cities in the world, you'll find that buildings using resilient material like stone, they stay, they remain. Yeah, and because buildings are built to last, we also have to design the buildings in a manner that they can also adopt and adapt itself as our needs progresses. Right? So architecture is really very all-encompassing. And yes, on that particular project, when I'm given a full free rein, it was like freedom. And I started all the thinking that I had, all the ideas that I have, I introduced it into the building, in the selection of the materials, in how we detail it to avoid simple things like when it rains, how does the water flow on the facade so that it doesn't create stains, so that we will not have water ponding that will create leakages, things like that. Or how do we design the walls to have the correct thermal insulation so that we can improve the efficiency of the air conditioning in the building, solar orientation. So in a way, yes, that particular building gave me quite a free rein that allowed me to really apply all aspects of good design for resilience, for sustainability into the building.
So is there any coated steel for the cladding for that particular project?
Yes, we did use coated steel, but not as the primary wall cladding of the building. But the wall cladding of the building, it is actually coated metal. We're using aluminium with a particular coating. And it's also not for the entire building. It's only for the parts that are relevant and most suitable to use that material. Yeah, we've got areas that are using AC block work, very simple, very raw, and we just exposed it because that was suitable for that particular part of the building. Yeah, so it was really about not going up and say that, oh, I want to have the building clad in steel. It is very much about, well, what's the functionality of the building, what is it, and what's the most suitable material for that whatever function that we want.
So how coated steel first enter in your architectural project? Was it inspired by something in your design? Is it functionality or something that you needed?
I suppose my first exposure to the term coated steel would have been in university, in a lecture hall, when we're talking about building materials. And that is the first realization that I had that, oh, all the corrugated cladding that I see when I was in Australia is coated steel. Whereas all the rusty corrugated zinc that I see in Malaysia is not coated steel. That was my first realization of the difference.
How important is proven quality and reliability impact to today's construction environments?
It is just so important that the buildings that we design, the building envelope should be extremely durable, because the lifespan of the building is almost infinite. We never design a building and say, okay, this building will last for 20 years, and then let's say you scrap the whole building and you start all over again. No, I think buildings are really, really meant to stay for a very, very long time. So it is very important, and not only just on the physical longevity of the building, but also in terms of contractual matters, in terms of the contractors when they build, the architects, our design liability, developers who are selling on the product to their end purchasers, what is the liability on the quality of a product. I think it's just so important. Our world has gone a little bit more complicated today. There are so many commercial interests, there's so many things going out there. I think it's even more important today that we recognize what are the most appropriate materials to use, what is the lifespan of the material, and we really, really use the correct material for the correct purpose. Yeah, but ultimately buildings are meant to last for a very long time.
When you look back to your early career, so what do you believe in the past in architecture and you don't believe today?
Maybe a trick question there somewhere. No, I would say, of course, in the first few years of practice, when I first come out, the realities of the commercial world, the realities of actual projects and all that did dampen my enthusiasm for architecture. In the very, very early years, I felt disappointed that all the ideals that we've developed over our student days, we are not in the position to exercise it. But as I come here today, after having gone through all the past experiences and projects and all that, after having learned how to navigate and maneuver ourselves around the industry, I find that what I believe in architecture is truer than ever before. That it is the duty of an architect to do what we do best, and that is designing excellent buildings, buildings that last, buildings that function, buildings that would really, really realistically add value to the world. We make the world a better place than before we built the building. And eventually, when the time comes when we leave the world, we will leave behind something that would have contributed to the betterment of the world, in the society, the environment, sustainability, and the general humanity. I think it's so important. I think we've got a great role that we are privileged to be an architect, and I think we really should just double up our efforts or roll up our sleeves and really get on to it.
What do you think the next generation now is doing well than your generation that you didn't do it better?
I think the current generation, new architects, the young, fresh architects, thankfully, they are not exposed to the limitations of engineering, the limitations on how to build a building and all that. They are very free. They can come in here and they can just look into the design, what would make the best design. They're not limited by their knowledge on what cannot be done. So I think they're really doing an excellent job on that. Me, I've gone through so many years. I learn more of what I cannot do rather than what I can do, so I start to be limited. So I think that's really what the new generation are. So it's fantastic. In order for them to move forward, is that very good. Let them explore, let them do. Think of what architecture ought to be. Then rely on old people like us to say, you know what, yes, I'll try and build it for you. Yeah, but they have to be led by design, and I think the young generation can do an excellent job on that.
Last question. So if let's say today sitting in front of you there's a young architect, what is your most honest advice that you want to give to this young architect?
Pursue your dreams. You've chosen to be an architect for whatever reason, and I think being an architect is a very privileged profession, because it is a profession where you can be an artist, you can be a sculptor, but you're not just creating an art piece, you're actually creating buildings. You're actually creating an environment where people will live in, people will work in, practically everybody will live in a building. You walk down the streets, everyone is enjoying what an architect would have created, what he would have planned. So in some ways, you've got the future of the world in your hand with your pen and nowadays the keyboard. So pursue your dreams, go ahead. Yeah, you're an architect, you're in a brilliant profession. It's a fantastic profession.